My body sends me signals when I'm not aware of things that are happening. And it's typically when my values are being triggered. I'll get a pit in my stomach, or my heart will start racing, or I can feel something. And it's like, oh, stop, pay attention. Your body's trying to tell you something your mind isn't able to identify, and sort of reflect on that. What's happening there?
Hello, possibility seekers. We are back and we've got a great guest, and her name is MH McQuiston. She is VP and general manager at a software company called Autodesk, where she leads the global team responsible for ensuring that students are inspired and prepared to design and make anything, including greener buildings, smarter products, and mesmerizing blockbusters. She has reinvented herself multiple times over her 20-year career at the company, holding pretty much every role you can imagine on the commercial side of the house and spanning a wide variety of businesses and industries from consumer to 3D printing to platform. She even earned a patent along the way. Mary Hope, which we call her MH, and she prefers that, is passionate about equal access to education, women's and girls' advancement, and LGBTQ rights. She believes that great companies recruit and retain the best employees from the broadest talent pool possible. Welcome, MH. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
You got it. The first time I spoke to you, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to have this woman on the podcast. We need to talk about voice. We need to talk about all these things that happen to women in corporate America and all those little bumps along the way. We can't relate to any of them, I'm sure, right?
No, no. If only.
If only, that's right. So do you wanna just walk us and the listener through, and the viewers through your journey in corporate America, especially the space and technology that I think everyone will find that fascinating.
Okay. So, yeah, let me just start by saying, if you look at my career path, you will notice three things. One has lots of twists and turns. Okay. It is by no means, so it's more of a back road, country road, if you will, than a highway. The second thing you will notice is, as you said, I've done pretty much every job you can on the commercial side of the house. I've done marketing, I've done partnerships and business development and strategic alliances. I even did some time in sales. I've done product strategy and operations. Okay. And the third thing you'll notice is I have spent a tremendous amount of time at the same company, okay, which is Autodesk, and I actually have been there twice, if you can believe it. I was there in the '90s for about 6 years, I left, and then I came back, and I have been back 20 consecutive years. So that's pretty insane if you think about it. But, like, why am I staying so long, and how have I, managed to grow and develop? So, I guess the thing that I have learned about myself is that I need to be genuinely and personally inspired by what a company does. That's my reality. I have to actually believe in what the company does, right? It gets me through moments where that might be more difficult. The second thing I need is to work with really, really smart people who don't take themselves too seriously. Okay.
Which is usually mutually exclusive.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I've worked with really, really smart people who were, real jerks, if you will, and I've worked with really nice people who were pretty sometimes inept. Okay, so just putting it out there. So I really need to work with smart people, but who aren't jerks. Okay. And the third thing I've learned about myself is I bore easily. So I need to be in an environment where I can learn and grow and stretch and have new experiences and develop new skills. And the reason I have stayed at Autodesk, and the reason I came back, is because it meets all three of those criteria. I think what I've learned in looking back now is that I try and keep a long view. Okay. So the temptation is typically to, what's this going to get me today? Is this going to get me money? Is this going to get me title? Is this going to get me power? And that. And I have those instincts for sure. But what I've found is keeping the long view and sort of saying, what skills or experiences might this give me today that might help me in the future? And I'll give you an early career example at Autodesk. Actually, my first tour of duty at the company back in the 90s. I had been working in a product group that was, well, we actually sold the business. Okay. So I stayed with the company, but I needed to figure out what I was going to do next. And I was given two options. Okay. One was to be the product marketing manager for AutoCAD. Okay. AutoCAD is the company's cash cow. Most people know AutoCAD, fewer know the name Autodesk, okay? So, high profile, big brand, known globally, big revenue generator, and this was at a time where there was a lot of pressure on getting the next release of the product right, and marketing was gonna be a key component of it, okay? So, they asked me to join as the product marketing manager for release 14, okay? And and I mean, I was really, I was humbled. I was like, "Wow, this is incredible that they would think of me." Of course I have to take it because imagine what I could do if I took this job because it's gonna have the revenue, the brand cachet. I'm gonna be able to say I did all this stuff. And but something wasn't sitting right with me. And I thought, "What is this? Why is this not sitting right with me?" And what I realized is I'm more about building, creating, pathfinding, and the new more so than optimizing, standardizing, catching a business when it's at that level. I'm earlier. And the other thing I know about myself is I like to move fast and I like to make an impact. And I like to work with small, nimble, cross-functional teams, and that was not gonna be the case in that option.
Oh,
Because at that point, there was 2,500 employees, each of whom thought they owned the business and knew how to market it. And, you had to, like, tie into all the everything. It was like a aircraft carrier, and I wanted to be, on a sailfish or something like that. And so I said no to AutoCAD. And instead, I joined this nascent team that was prototyping a new product that you have no idea if it's gonna work or not. And actually, there was a behemoth competitor in the space too. So, like, why would you ever do that? Okay, but let me tell you, so I did that. I got to work on a small cross-functional nimble team. We could have impact, we could make decisions, we were doing new things for the company. So it fulfilled me, it kept me engaged, I felt satisfied, I felt like I was having an impact. That was short term. What it did is help me create my reputation in the company, okay? Oh, you got something new, you got a new challenge, you got something hard, you need to do something, you need to go to MH. She is willing to take risks, she's willing to roll up her sleeves, and she's willing to find the path and stuff. Building that reputation actually is what got Autodesk to call me to come ask if I would come back, okay? Is that reputation. The other thing is once I came back, it's why they put me on these new businesses, consumer. That's how I got to have a patent because they said, "You know who we need to partner with these really bright PhDs is MH because she can go toe to toe with them and help them think and help them play back their ideas and stuff." So anyhow, so that is one of the ways that I've maintained such an exciting career there at the company, and but also why, because I really understood who I am and how I'm wired.
so I'm gonna unpack that for a second because normally, like to your point, today when you look at somebody's resume, it is very unlikely that you see 20-year career at the same company. And you certainly don't hear 20-year at the same company with a smile on one's face. Normally, when I speak to somebody that's been in a company for 20 plus years, there's a little friction in the description of what happened over the course of that career. For me, what I hear you say also is you had enormous clarity about who you were, what you stood for, what was important to you, and what your value system was. And that is something that I literally coach women on all the time. without knowing what you want, you can't attract it. You can't bring it forth. You can't land a job that has those components in it if you don't know what you're looking for. It's the law of attraction without direction, right? So if you don't know what you want, you're going to keep getting what you're going to get, which is a whole lot of nothing. Right? So how did you get, and I know I'm going a little bit off topic for 1 second and there's purpose to it. How did you become so unusually clear and distinct about who you were so early on in your life?
I have 2 thoughts. One is my body. My body sends me signals when I'm not aware of things that are happening, and it's typically when my values are being triggered. I'll get a, like, pit in my stomach, or my heart will start racing, or I can feel something, and it's like, "Oh, stop, pay attention." Your body's trying to tell you something your mind isn't able to identify, and sort of reflect on that. What's happening there? And so that's one. And I think honestly, the second is my mother. Okay. So my mother, who she went to college, she got a full ride to grad school. She was a teacher. She, though, decided when after I was born, I'm the oldest, to stay at home. Okay. And she raised me. She volunteered. She worked, she had actually pretty big volunteer opportunities. My father went to Yale, went to Harvard Law School, had a very successful career. And why tell you this is because both of them, wanted what was best for me, but they came from different perspectives. And my father was much more oriented towards achievement and intellect, and my mom was more on character. And and she said that's what matters most is, I don't care what you do. I'm not going to get all enamored by your degrees or your achievements. Who are you? Are you showing up in the world and making a difference? And so I kind of have her in the background when I'm thinking through some of these things. And that helped give me that clarity is for who I am and what do I stand for, and making sure, yeah, versus what do other people think of me, or what other people, want me to do.
Well, God bless. That's so you well, first, I think you're fortunate and you're unique in that grounded knowledge base so early on, because I think for most women, and I my present company included, I didn't really get the memo, as I like to say, until I was in my mid 40s, where I really got the memo and, really, really embraced what other people think of me is none of my business kind of thing. And now I have no F's or S's to give, I don't care.
Yeah, well, let's be clear, like, it shows up at different levels, at different, stages, for sure. Where the seed was planted was probably back there.
That's awesome. And the visceral physical reaction speaks to a very high empathy and high EQ that just exists in your humanity. That's kind of cool. So what's your approach and experience and best practices advice for identifying opportunities and growth even when you're working for the same company? Like what is that, what does that look like for you, and how can you tell somebody who may not be as tuned into how to do it, or that they're doing it sort of unconsciously, how to go about it?
I scan the horizon, okay? And by what I mean by that is I take responsibility for understanding the context in which I'm operating, right? So it's kind of like driving, you want to, know what's coming around you. And in the work world, what I do is I make sure I'm listening to, in this case, I work for a public company, so I'm listening to the investor calls. I'm listening to what the CEO is saying. I'm going to those all hands meetings and I'm reading the strategy documents, because that helps me understand the context, right? Where is the company going? What's working? What's not? And what might happen as a result of that? And, like, how might I help the company? Okay? So understand that context and figure out how I might be able to map myself to that. And then when those, opportunities come up, I see stuff like it. And by the way, I should also just say, leaning into change. So is it's something that's really humorous maybe about me. As I said, I bore easily. So I seek novelty, but I resist change. Like, I'm like, oh, let's do the new stuff. Let's go do new stuff. And oh, I don't want to switch this or that. I get attached to stuff. I get attached to people, I get attached to roles or teams or whatever. And the context and then just change is inevitable, right? I mean, we all know that, right? There's going to be a reorg, there's going to be an acquisition, there's going to be whatever. Pick your and I've learned now, look for those moments. There are opportunities in there, right? And so, I have we there was an opportunity. So the company decided to go after the consumer space, which made so we make really complex software that really bright people use to design and make and engineer the world around us, right? And so our then CEO, he saw out on the horizon. So for the context, he saw out that the cloud, mobile, and social platforms were going to be the future. And our big complex software was running on desktops. And so he said, I need a team to go out and push the boundaries and get this complex stuff running on these new platforms because I think that's the future. And again, there's no revenue, there's no guarantees. But I was like, ooh, this feels interesting. This feels like it could be not just good in the moment, but something that could set me up for success, in the future. But I had to leave what I was doing. I had to leave the team. I had to start from scratch. I had to go from having a team to being an individual contributor, the first marketer in that team. And, but I understood this was gonna be critical to the company and hopefully to myself. And so Horizon, then the strategic fit and stuff. And for me personally, I look for opportunities that what's the challenge for me? Is this gonna be fun? Is this something big? Is this worthy of it? And then, what skills, what experience am I gonna be able to acquire as a result of this? And who am I gonna get to work for and with? And, the for I think is really important, okay? And I guess maybe, just given the way I'm wired, and I've always been an observer. I always am like, who's this person? Who's the leader of this team? Do they have credibility? Do they have vision? Because that's what's going to engage me personally, but that's probably what's going to make them effective. Are they going to get the investment dollars? Are they going to get the yes? So the people part is also really important.
You didn't have a problem speaking up and speaking out for yourself.
Oh, I've had that for sure. It's so funny because I am opinionated. I have strong points of view. I can talk loud and strong, and but no, I still to this day, I'm someone who will still say, "Oh, do I really want to ask the wait staff to return? This is a little these eggs aren't quite that warm. Like, what is that, right?" And I've had it happen in the work world too, and um, going back to the beginning of my career, there was one incident that really stands out, for me. So I was early in my career. I had, just become a people manager. So I had a small team that was reporting to me. I was working on a cross-functional organization. So I was leading product management, product marketing at the time, and my coworkers were all different functions. They were all men. And I really wanted to demonstrate my value and my impact and my potential, right? I wanted to advance. This is where I wanted to take on more responsibility. And one of my coworkers really struggled with me. And he would make these comments that were meant to, I think, sort of rattle me and distract and disengage me. And one time we were meeting with a potential partner, okay? And this was a big potential partner. So we had brought them into the executive briefing center, really to demonstrate you are important to us. It was me, my coworkers, and then three or four members of this partner. And I'm standing in the front of the room and I'm on point to present. And I'm presenting. I've got the clicker in my hands and I'm on my slides. I'm trying to make my point. And my coworker this coworker, this supposed member of my team with the third party partner in front of me. There was an image on the back of the screen and he said to me, "Hey MH, are those your thighs?" And by the way, there was nothing suggestive about the image. We were demonstrating a search engine, by the way. And I was so rattled. And I mean, he totally took me off my train of thought. I just froze in the moment. And I looked, quickly scanned the room, and again, I'm the only woman. All the men are looking down. Like none of them know what to do. And I had the feeling, and I was like, I just had to plow through. I have to plow through. I have to plow through. I plowed through, finished my slides. I sat down. Of course I couldn't think about anything else. I go home that night, and my husband, who knew I had this presentation in front of this prospective partner, says to me that night, asks, "Hey, how did the presentation go?" And I said, "Oh, it was fine." And Monique, I didn't tell him what happened. And I didn't tell him what happened because I was ashamed. Because I am such a strong woman and I show up fierce so many times. And I was afraid he was gonna say, "What do you mean you didn't say something? Why didn't you speak up for yourself? Why didn't you push back?" And so I didn't say anything. And it was later in the week, two things happened. This guy is still around. I'm still in meetings with him. He's still planting these things.
So you haven't addressed it with him yet at
I
all?
haven't said anything. It's stewing.
Sure.
And it's stewing, and, I'm in a room with him, and now I just can't stand to be in a room with him. And after one meeting, he had said something, and this time on the surface, it didn't seem like anything, absent the context of what had been going on. And, one of my coworkers came up to me and said, "Hey, MH, is everything okay? You seem a little irritated. You seem a little off." And I thought, "Oh my god, this is his point. I am now coming off as the irrational, emotional woman." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm giving him control." And then I thought, not only that, I've let him come in between me and my husband.
I get it.
And so I went home and told my husband. And he's like, "Oh my god. Of course, like, first of all, he was furious, right? And just like angry at this person. The other thing is I did was, and this is another thing I've learned to do is go to people who will tell it to you like it is, right? I called my father, okay? Remember the rational achievement lawyer, just the facts. And I said, "Dad," and who's not a soft, this is not, and I said, "Here's what happened." And I told him that incident, but I also gave him examples of all the others. And he paused and he said, "You have to say something." And he said, "You need to put this on paper." And I thought, "Oh, I got validated from someone for whom this is not like what you typically do." And now I've got the fire in me, right? And I went to my manager. And then I went, and who brought in our HR person at the time. And this, Monique, was back way before today, where there's a whole, a vocabulary. So it was so the HR person said, "We're gonna have a meeting." And they did it on a Friday afternoon in my boss's office. I assume because they didn't want the rest of the team to have any semblance of what was going on. And I she he the this guy had written a response, and she said, "Do you wanna," so "You wanna tell MH what you're thinking." And so he reads his written response, and she says to him, "Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add or say to MH?" And he says, "Well, MH, I'm gonna try my hardest, but next time I'd really appreciate it if you gave me feedback in the moment."
I'd really appreciate if you shut your mouth.
And I was like, now now she's on fire inside. My mom is I'm channeling my mother, and I said, "Oh, let me be really clear. There will be no next time." And I said, "I am willing to stay here as long as we need in order for everyone here to understand exactly what we're talking about." And boom, drop, mic drop, and he never did anything to me again. But what I think again, that's was like in the immediate term, but it was an incredibly difficult and powerful lesson for me. Like I will not compromise my own integrity, right? And I will not let someone else dictate these types of things. And I gave him the power. And no, I haven't always had the courage to speak up, but that was one time that where I dug deep and found the voice, and it's paid off over the long term.
What you're describing, and you've read my book, so you know, it's like the 3rd grade bully that punched me in the face. It's when you don't have the difficult conversation in the moment or pretty close to the moment, you cede your power to somebody else. And when they know that they can get under our skin, they're going to do it over and over and over again because ultimately that's what they want. They want you to be off your game or perplexed as to what the next slide is because you just threw an inappropriate comment at the wrong time or what, and everybody in the room is looking down knowing that they have witnessed him being inappropriate and they don't know what to do with it because they don't wanna make you even more crazy. So it's this, the dynamics of what happens in companies and in work situations is really pretty sensitive. I'm glad that you found your voice and you found the courage to speak up and consult those who could make a difference in future conversations where this person could be doing it to and with others. Nip that in the bud, and hopefully he had a lived career.
Now I kind of feel sorry for him, to be honest, because I've seen where he's not gotten much further than where he was all those years ago.
Well, again, I think the I take some solace in understanding and hearing that people with lack of integrity and lack of a moral compass are actually held back, because if he didn't get held back, I would have some concerns about your corporation. So I think that aligns, right? So for me, I saw men like that get rewarded, which is why I started my own business, right? So if you have this kind of dynamic and this kind of experience and you get rewarded for it and you're the one being bullied, if you will, seeing that experience, that doesn't give you much hope for the organization.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, and it starts at the top, and then the tone that gets set.
Yeah. So on a similar note, what do you think holds women back specifically from speaking up?
Look, I believe we're all born with a voice. I mean, you can travel the world and any baby you meet is gonna cry, right? And isn't that like, "I'm trying to tell you what I'm feeling or what I need." And, I think for women, and I think we are socialized to defer to authority, defer to our elders, to not ruffle feathers, and not to speak up unless we really are 100% sure we're right, right? Because if we don't, we can look emotional, we can look selfish, we can look dumb. And then for us, it's like, ooh, if I do that, then I'm gonna be dismissed, I'm gonna be forgotten, I'm gonna be made fun of, I'm gonna be left behind. And so I think those are probably things that unconsciously are going through my head when I'm figuring out whether I wanna speak up or not.
Right. No, that's absolutely the case. Plus, yeah, the socialization is be seen and not heard and speak when you're spoken to.
Right, and reinforce, talk about positive reinforcement.
Yeah, I mean, it starts it's grade school when, when the teacher says, "Don't pipe up," and Johnny just interrupted her 3 times. So it's that thing. So what advice would you have for women similarly? They're in corporate America, they're facing this kind of nonsense, or they're not. They're in, it could be in any scenario, in any context, but they're experiencing something like this, and you know that the right thing is to speak up, and they're hesitant and they're not doing it. What is something that you can latch onto and say, this is just my advice based on my experience?
So a couple of thoughts there. One is I'll just again, if anyone out there is like me and your body tells you, it's telling you, should I speak or should I not speak? Do I have something or not? Just listen to that, note it, and just give yourself permission to sort of reflect and what's happening. What has been triggered, okay? Then I do a couple of things also. So I will sometimes I don't wanna make it about me. So I'm like, "What's my motivation? Why do I wanna speak up on this topic?" And this, and so one of the hacks I have is, well, if I can't do it for myself, do it for the others, right? Behind me, because that sometimes is easier, right, to get wrapped around. It's not about me, it's about the people behind me or the team I'm representing, and if I get belittled, then my team is not gonna be respected, and we're not gonna get the praise. So I make it about them. The other thing I will do in high stakes conversations, and this is less for one that's in the moment, but if I know I have to go meet with someone and I'm gonna have to say something they don't want to hear, I will practice. Okay. I will block it out and I will think, where's this person coming from? Right. And not only what do I want to say, but how can I say it in a way and deliver it in a way that it can be heard? So I'll give you an example of a time when that has not happened, which is, and I witnessed this. This is a woman who I really, really love and respect and very, very accomplished. And we were at a senior leaders offsite. So, you know, the top 100 of 10,000 employees. And we were being asked by our CEO, he was prompting us to challenge him on a very emotional topic. He's like, "Come on, challenge me, come on, challenge me." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure he really wants to be challenged or in this room, or you have to be really thoughtful." Well, this woman, she spoke up, and what she was totally valid.
Okay.
He delivered it in a calm and clear message way, but the channel was wrong because he didn't he felt, insecure and attacked, and so he and so I think, it's what are you saying, how are you saying it, when are you saying it? And then I practice. I literally will practice, okay, what if they do this or what if they do that, for those kind of high stakes conversations. If I had it to do over again in the moment, because that was the example I gave you, I don't think I would say anything to him in the moment because honestly, I don't want to give him that power, and I acknowledging it in the room somehow might give him, but I
Yeah.
would take him to the side now as a more mature person with lots of experience, and I would have said, "Hey, when you said that, this is how it made me feel. Was that your intention?" And then I'd be really clear, like, just to be clear, you never to do that again. So I would have probably done that in the moment. But I probably would have started with, "Hey, assume don't assume you know why he's doing something. Maybe he had some catastrophe happen that day. Maybe this is an opportunity. I doubt it, but maybe." And I is like lean into people and your own experiences that may inspire you. Like that I'll get kind of use that to get psyched up, if you will.
So what's the best career advice you've ever gotten or given, excuse me?
So I'm this is also what I've got. Okay. I received this that I think it's and it's some of what we've been talking about. The first thing is make decisions based on you, who you are, not one on other people and what other people think you should do. Okay. The second, building on that, was find people who will tell you like it is. Right? And because you may think you're self-aware, but may not be fully self-aware of how you show up, and find people who are gonna tell it to you like it is. And then the third is, um, look for opportunities that will create opportunities. So those that's the best I've been given, and I think, the best I can give too.
Awesome. What's the worst career advice you've ever been given?
I have been there's 2, so they're tied for first. One is you need to specialize and get really, really good at one thing, okay? I think that there's validity in that for some. That's not the case for me. As we know, I've done a whole lot of things, and actually what I'm really good at is transferable above anyone's discrete area. The second was make sure you have a contract before you say yes to the job. So that was my father. Back early in the days, I was given an opportunity to move from I was living in Boston working for a tiny startup and they offered to move me to San Francisco. And he's like, "Oh my god, you're going to no one in my family ever moved anywhere." And so he's like, "You're going to move all the way across the country. You don't know anyone there. There's no guarantees. What if you get fired or laid off and you're all the way over there? You need to have a contract. You need to have a contract." This was not a company that was going to give me a contract. And I jumped, and if I hadn't jumped, so much of what I've learned and grown would never have happened. So those would be the 2.
That's awesome. So lastly, if you had a chance to speak to with your 30-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Wow. I would tell her, "Don't let, uh don't let perfection be the enemy of good." Is that the statement? It is?
Dropped a podcast on that the other week.
Oh, did you? Okay, because that is the thing that, I think is one of my, Achilles heels. I try to go for perfect, and what happens is you're never gonna get there, and I said no to so many gatherings and parties and opportunities to create my own interests and hobbies to real go deep because I was like, I need one more round on that." So I'd say, "Lighten up, lighten up."
There you go. It's really great. Yeah. So my favorite expression, and I use it around the office and in my home a lot, is 85% great is better than 100% late.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And say yes more often, which is how I'm trying to live my life right now. So last parting words for everyone before we wrap up. Anything you want to leave the universe with in this podcast, what would that be?
Okay. So something I am becoming more aware of that I would love to share is, life is a journey. It's not a destination. This is one project you don't want to finish early ahead of deadline, right? And so, like, really, take the long view, make sure you're in the driver's seat versus in the back seat, and, enjoy it. Have fun along the way.
Thank you so much, MH. This has been so much fun. Possibility seekers, please let us know what you think. Drop a comment, share this episode with somebody that you know will appreciate it and get a huge kick out of it because MH has a lot of pearls of wisdom. Be good and make it a great day. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique de Maio, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemaio.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.